Building on executive communication, you now move to the place where enterprise architecture either becomes respected or becomes ignored. Delivery. Your credibility is not proven by the quality of your diagrams. It is proven by whether programs deliver outcomes faster, safer, and with less rework because you were involved. Delivery enablement is the discipline of helping product, engineering, operations, security, and vendors move in the same direction without turning architecture into a bottleneck. With that context clear, you should define delivery enablement in practical terms. Delivery enablement means you create clarity early, remove uncertainty, provide reusable patterns, and guide decisions so teams can implement confidently. You do not take over delivery. You do not micromanage solution design. You create the conditions where teams can deliver consistently and where governance feels like support rather than inspection. When delivery enablement is done well, teams feel faster, executives feel safer, and architecture becomes a multiplier rather than a gate. Now that you know what enablement is, you adopt the shift that makes it work. You move from being an approval authority to being a decision support function. Delivery teams do not need more meetings. They need faster decisions, clearer constraints, and fewer surprises. You provide decision support by clarifying what is non-negotiable, what is flexible, what patterns exist, what risks matter, and how exceptions are handled. This shift changes your relationship with delivery teams from tension to partnership. With decision support in mind, you now place yourself where you add the most value. Early. The cost of architecture change increases sharply after funding, contracts, and plans are locked in. Delivery enablement starts during discovery and initiation, when scope, dependencies, and constraints are still negotiable. You help teams define a realistic problem statement, confirm alignment to roadmaps and capability priorities, and identify the key risks and assumptions that must be validated early. Early involvement is how you prevent late rework and late conflict. With early engagement established, you now work closely with product leaders because product shapes what success means. Product leaders think in customer outcomes, time to value, and prioritization. You help translate those outcomes into architecture choices that preserve speed without creating future fragility. You clarify what platform capabilities must exist to support product goals, what non-functional requirements matter for customer trust, and what trade-offs are being made. When you partner well with product, roadmaps become outcome-driven rather than feature-driven, and architecture becomes an enabler of product strategy. With product alignment in place, you now partner with engineering leadership because engineering shapes how solutions are built. Engineering teams value autonomy, speed, and practical constraints. You enable autonomy by providing clear guardrails, principles, standards, patterns, and decision records that reduce ambiguity. You also help engineering avoid hidden complexity, such as integration sprawl, inconsistent identity models, and missing observability that creates operational pain later. When engineering trusts your guidance, they deliver faster because they stop revisiting foundational decisions in every sprint. With engineering partnership established, you now bring operations into the architecture conversation early because operations will own the solution long after delivery ends. Supportability is not something you add later. You define service ownership, incident response expectations, monitoring outcomes, and operational readiness criteria early so go live becomes controlled rather than stressful. You also ensure handover is planned, documentation is meaningful, and recurring responsibilities are clear. When you partner with operations properly, you protect reliability and reduce on-call fatigue, which also increases long-term delivery velocity. With operations involved, you now ensure security and risk teams are part of the delivery enablement model, not an external audit function. You align security by design expectations, control mapping, and exception processes early so teams know what is required before they build. You also ensure residual risk acceptance pathways are clear and owned by the right people. This prevents the most damaging pattern in enterprise delivery: late-stage security surprises that force redesign, delays, or informal risk acceptance. Alignment early is how security becomes a delivery enabler rather than a delivery disruptor. With key internal partners aligned, you now operate at the program and portfolio level, because many failures are not technical failures, they are coordination failures. Programs often optimize locally, making decisions that work for one team but create fragmentation across the enterprise. You prevent drift by keeping programs aligned to target state direction, shared platforms, and reusable patterns. You also surface cross-program dependencies early and ensure decisions are recorded so they remain consistent when teams change. This is how enterprise architecture protects coherence at scale. With program alignment in mind, you now manage vendors in a way that protects enterprise outcomes. Vendors are often excellent at selling features, but features do not guarantee alignment to your operating model, security posture, or supportability requirements. You define vendor success in terms of architecture fit, integration boundaries, data handling, identity alignment, observability expectations, and long-term operability. You also ensure contracts and statements of work reflect these expectations, so the vendor is accountable for outcomes rather than only deliverables. When you do this, vendor engagement becomes safer and less political. With vendor outcomes defined, you now step into pre-sales and early shaping, because the most expensive architecture problems often begin before delivery starts. You help evaluate feasibility, integration complexity, operating model impact, and security obligations before commitments are made. You challenge unrealistic timelines and hidden costs early, and you ensure decision makers understand trade-offs before signing contracts. This is not negativity. This is leadership protection. Pre-sales shaping is where you prevent bad deals that create multi-year pain. With early shaping established, you now focus on interfaces and dependencies because they drive delivery friction. You ensure interface ownership is clear, integration patterns are consistent, and interface control documents exist where needed to prevent conflicting implementations. You also ensure dependency risks are visible, such as upstream service reliability, data quality constraints, and third-party service limitations. When interfaces are clear, teams build faster because they are not waiting for rework, renegotiation, or late discovery of integration gaps. With dependencies controlled, you now use decision records as a key enablement tool. Delivery slows when the same decisions are debated repeatedly due to staff changes, program changes, or leadership changes. A decision record captures what was decided, why it was decided, what trade-offs were accepted, what risks remain, and what conditions trigger review. Decision records protect continuity, reduce politics, and make governance faster because history is visible and defensible. With decision continuity in place, you now handle exceptions in a way that enables delivery rather than blocking it. When a team cannot meet a standard due to legacy constraints or time pressure, you use a clear exception process that documents rationale, compensating controls, residual risk acceptance, and a time-bound uplift plan. This keeps delivery moving while keeping risk visible. It also protects teams from being forced into informal shortcuts that later become audit failures or incident triggers. Mature exception handling is one of the most valuable enablement skills you can bring. With enablement mechanisms set, you now measure whether your architecture function is truly enabling delivery. You look for reduced rework, fewer late-stage escalations, fewer emergency exceptions, faster governance turnaround, improved reuse of patterns, and smoother go-live readiness. You also look for operational signals such as fewer incidents, faster recovery, and clearer ownership. When you can show these improvements, executives see architecture as a value creator rather than overhead. Measurement is how you protect your architecture model from becoming optional. With the full model in mind, you can now see delivery enablement in practice. Imagine a customer services modernization program involving product, engineering, operations, security, and a vendor platform. You align product on outcomes and non-functional requirements, align engineering on patterns and constraints, align operations on readiness and ownership, and align security on control mapping and exceptions. You manage the vendor by enforcing architecture fit and operability expectations. You record decisions and interfaces so teams do not relitigate them later. The program moves faster because foundational uncertainty is removed early, and leadership feels confident because risk and accountability are visible. With the example in mind, you now avoid the failure patterns that make architecture feel like a blocker. Delivery enablement fails when architects arrive late, speak only in theory, demand heavy documentation, slow down governance, or ignore operational reality. It also fails when architects do not tailor communication, do not record decisions, and do not manage exceptions transparently. You avoid these failures by being early, being outcome driven, using patterns and decision records, running lightweight governance, and partnering respectfully with delivery teams. When you behave like an enabler, you become one. Let's now discuss the key takeaways from what you learned so far, so you can enable delivery across product, engineering, vendors, and programs without becoming a bottleneck. Delivery enablement is the discipline of reducing uncertainty early, providing guardrails and reusable patterns, clarifying interfaces and dependencies, recording decisions, and managing exceptions transparently with accountable residual risk acceptance. You partner with product on outcomes, with engineering on autonomy within guardrails, with operations on supportability and readiness, with security on control alignment, and with vendors on architecture fit and operability. When you measure reduce friction and reduce rework, you prove architecture value and increase executive trust. As you close this playlist, commit to one mindset. Enterprise architecture is not a document factory, it is a delivery multiplier. Subscribe to the channel for more playlists like this video, so it reaches more leaders and architects. Comment with the biggest delivery enablement challenge you face, and share it with someone who works across programs and wants faster, safer delivery outcomes.